GingerGM.
Hello everyone, and yeah, welcome to another stream. Going to be doing something a little bit educational today for a change. Haven't done one of these for a while, so you never know, you might learn something, as unlikely as that may be. Well, we're going to be concentrating on the topic of attacking chess. I'm going to give you various positions that I've prepared, and they're all from a book which I have somewhere, I think, or maybe I've already thrown it away because I've finished it. Here it is. It's popping up my kettle at the moment. Popping up the kettle. Thank you, Push the Pawns, for the chair. Very kind of you. This book, and this is a classic attacking book. The Art. I keep saying The Art, but it's actually called Art of Attack. And I also say Art of the Attack, but it's actually just Art of Attack, by a chap called Vladimir Vukovic. And I'll be honest, I didn't know much about this book until I did a recent course for Chessable. I say a recent course. I was doing all the videos to everything in this book, and it's a bloody big book, and it took me 30 hours, and I have to admit at times I was sick of it. Absolutely sick of the book, but it's a bloody good book, and I learned a lot. And I thought I'd just share with you, in case you haven't got the money, to buy it, because it is quite a lot of money. It's 30 hours of video you get with me, but it's just under $100, so that's a lot of dough. I will share with you some of what I thought, some of the highlights from the whole book. I'm not going to show many big games because they're quite hard to get across, I think, in a stream, but I'm going to show you little bits here and there, pose you some questions, which I hope you have a go at trying to solve in the chat. Hopefully try to tell you little things that can help you learn from the positions I'm showing, and yeah, just maybe help you a little bit in your way of thinking and attacking chess, or if you just want to sit back and watch some beautiful examples, that's also cool. Thank you, Push the Pawns, for all the cheers that you're giving. That's very, very kind. Thank you for that. And let's just say hello to people in the chat before we get going today, shall we? Let's do that. Yes, why not? Hello to everyone, by the way. And I'll go through some of the names. If I miss your name out, I apologise. I'm not doing it on purpose, but I don't want to read forever. It could be a song. I don't want to read forever. It could be, but not by me singing it. Hardivovich, hello. Anit, hello Anit, hope you're doing well. Hardikovic says meow. Good on you, sir. Morp, hello Morpheus, who's watching one of my chess-based DVDs. Very good, thank you. Pornilla, Push the Pawns. That's Mr. Greet to you. Hello. CJS, let's go. I'm getting there, little by little. Hello, Aldo. Hope you're doing well, my friends. Paul Hansen, Jen's Chess, Frappuccino, Niels. Is that really the Niels Grandilius, the one and only, the famous Niels from Sweden? I don't know if it is, but he's a bloody good player and a very nice chap as well, if it is. And he does a lot of streaming, so go and check him out. Even if it's not him, who knows? Hello, Mr. Dodgy Chess. Are you being as dodgy as ever? Organising, I don't know what your tournament's all about, Mr. Dodgy. I just don't have time to get involved. I would love to. Maybe I will actually get involved. It does sound a lot of fun. Hope you're doing well, sir. The Magnificent Dan, and everyone else basically in the chat. So anyway, what we're going to get started with is a little example from his book, and it's one of my most favourite examples. Now, let's dive straight into the action here. And you're welcome to leave your comments. But one thing I would like to say today, before just typing away on the keyboard, with the first thought that comes into your mind, maybe just have a think about the position first. It's a good idea in chess to have a think. Sometimes I just move as well, and I just blunder, but try to have a little think. Thinking is good, and I want to see variations. I want to see your thought process, and I want to see if anyone can get these ideas right. Now, this is the position we are going to talk about. Now, Vukovic was a player from Yugoslavia. I think he was only an international master, but a grandmaster by today's rate. And he was a great author, very good player as well. But he really only wrote up to the times of like Alekhine and Capablanca. So that would be 1940s maybe. And a lot of his examples in the book are quite old. So they're from the end of the 1890s and into 1940s, the last examples. And he shows us how chess has developed through that time period. So he doesn't deal with the latest time period. It's very interesting to see how the history of chess has developed. And we might talk about that a bit later. But to start with, let's just have a look at this position. And this came from him thinking about a position he was writing on the dragon variation of the Sicilian. And he wrote about it in a book he was writing, Contemporary Opening Theory. And in this position here, it's white to move. And we should always, when we look at positions, do a couple of things. And this is what I want to do. I might take a bit longer explaining this one. Hopefully I won't need to repeat myself. When you're looking at a position, what do you do? If it's a position, one great way to improve, I find, is get a random chess magazine, get a random book, open it up on a random page, look at the position from a game and think who's better and why. Because the better you get at evaluating positions, the better you get at finding the key concept and the key idea in the position. If you can look at a position and think, right, that's important, you'll know what you should be trying to play. If you can't evaluate a position well, you will struggle to find the key idea. And that is what this position is all about. Now, if you've seen it, hello, Danny. I don't know if that is Danny Gormali. Oh, that's Danny. It's quite funny. You've got Gani Dormali, and then you've got El Gran Snore. And please don't give the answer away if you are a bloody grandmaster or something, because you don't even know the question yet. So it's quite funny. You've got the two Gormalis there, one real and one fake. Very amusing. So the first thing I'm going to do, all the examples I give you, they're fragments from games. And I want you to just evaluate the position. It's good to see Danny's got a bit of a fan club, or should we say, stalker. You don't make it until you've got a stalker. So well done there. In this position, let's just do that. So you evaluate it generally in two ways, I would say. Generally, any position. We're going to look at tactical positions today, attacking chess. But in general, you want to evaluate position through many different reasons. I always start by looking at the pawn structure and then the pieces. The pawn structure, the skeleton, you could say, like of your body. Let's say you're removing moving force, and the pieces are like the organs that make the body move. Now, the pawn structure here is not so relevant because there's so much going on with the pieces. But we can see that black has a pawn on b4, ready to rock and roll down on the c file. On the other hand, we should also note, and these are the important things I hope you did when evaluating the position, there's no pawn on the Harry file. Harry has exchanged himself off. So there's an open H file to attack along, which is very, very, very useful. But we should also then look at the pieces. And by looking at the pieces, you can see both sides has very dangerous pieces. This is double power on an open file. That is really, really strong. So we should be looking at the H file. We've also got a very good bishop. This bishop is very dangerously pointing towards black's king. And also it might be used to defend our own king. Our queen is hanging around the black king like a bad smell. But we're also faced with 2 rooks and potentially a queen coming down at our own king. And the next thing that's very important when you've looked at these things is work out, and I think this is not really talked about enough in chess, and that is actually timing. When you evaluate a position, and this includes your own games, how much time do you have? Do you need to freak out and do something really quickly, or do you have time to maybe play a bit more relaxed? Because sometimes good moves are found through desperation. In actual fact, they're found through just, you need to find something, otherwise you're losing. Now in this position, if we scale the timing, these are the things you think about originally, by the way, on the level of how urgent. This is bloody urgent. You're white here. If you don't do something quickly, you will get checkmated, because it's really, really sharp tactical position. So you should be thinking, I need to do something quickly. And you should also be thinking it's much better to attack than defend. So before you look at negative ideas, always look at positive ideas. Let's checkmate that bloody king. And then you should be thinking, okay, how do we go about doing that? So the first kind of thought we should be thinking of is something like Rook H8, because we should be looking at the most forcing moves with our pieces. But if the forcing moves do not work, we should be looking at moves that create threats. Now, first of all, before we come on to the right move, in this position, originally in the book that Vukovic was writing about, he stated, and he realized he made a mistake because this is pre-computer days, which I find amazing. I find it fascinating to look at analysis without computers. And I think it's a much better way to learn. You'll get much better not using a computer in general. The first thing he thought was queen to h4, because none of the forcing moves work here. I mean, Rook h8 is just nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. I mean, you take here, king here. You've only got 2 pieces now potentially attacking, but you can never get your bishop in. So you basically just lost. You've just lost the rook or 2. So it's complete nonsense. So if you go back to this position, you can't do anything immediate, so you must create a threat. You must. So queen h4 on the surface looks like a very good idea because you create a threat. So let's just say that now black is not paying attention and black plays pawn takes c3. How can white win here? This is very simple, but I know we have a range of levels in the chat, so I'm going to try to base this lesson for most of you, but also some of the lower rated players as well. Doesn't matter if you don't understand any of this. It's that this is a really hard one to get you going. They will become easier. Just have a go. Have a go. And we're talking about mainly timing and evaluating. So even if you can't calculate, just try to bear those things in mind. Hello, Chris. How you doing, mate? Chris Baker in the chat, International Master. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well and everyone else is joining in. Well, yes, of course. Now we can play the forcing move, queen to h8 check. And we should always be looking at these moves which check, which force mate, because now we have triple power and it works because the bishop here, very simple line, takes, check. I say simple. This is the kind of thing that will become simple if it's not at the moment. It may not look simple because it's not actually. It's not beginner stuff I'm teaching you. It's a little bit higher up than that. And here, that is checkmate. The knight can't take the rook because of the bishop on d4. So queen h4 on the surface looks very good. But in actual fact, black has a very good move here. And black, I feel, is I think, winning after the next move. And again, this is to do with timing. Black only has one move. And like I said before, sometimes out of desperation, you have to find the right move, and this next move gives black enough time to start his own attack. So what is the correct move for black here? And in actual fact, the only possible move. Hello to Bob Noyce as well. I hope Bob's doing all right. I'm sure he is. And as most of you, okay, king f8 does not work. I think you get mated again there, don't you? Because of queen h8. This is another very nice line. Killian, I mean, the king would love to run away, and this is something that Vukovic talks a lot about in his book. He calls it the self-defense king. which I quite like, and that is a king that is able to defend itself in many positions, but it can't defend itself in this position. It kind of needs a Bob Noyce character to keep him defended, I feel. Hello to Darren, who I know knows Bob as well. Hello, Darren, and thank you for gifting to the channel as well. Where is the mate now? Can you see it? And again, this is the kind of thing we've got to be looking for. We're taking this from the white side, but we've got to get into our opponent's mind. This does not work. We can force mate again. And again, queen here is winning because at some point we're going to take on g8, whether it's now or probably, let's say, after knight g8 in this position, because now our bishop is released. There's no knight blocking it. And we can take on g8 and we can go rook to h8 checkmate. So we can now see after queen h4, timing, black does not have time to do anything. He must do something drastic. And the only drastic move that can be played to stop the checkmate, but it turns the tide, is knight to h5. And knight to h5 here actually turns the tide in white's favour, probably. I mean, maybe g takes h5 is still very messy, but now we're going to look at some of our opponent's attacking ideas. And this is another thing that I think a lot of people could do immediately to become a better chess player. Examples after this will become easier, but what I mean by that is you should all try to get into your opponent's mind a lot more. This is one of the biggest mistakes beginners do, and also just amateur players. They don't think about their opponent's moves enough. I keep saying it, but it's true. And now after bishop takes g7, let's have a look at this move first. Black has time. So black has gained a tempo. Now black can attack white. So what should black play in this position? What should black play in this position? What should black play? So now you've got to think about your opponent's best attacking moves, because if you don't find his best attacking move in this position, you may just think, oh, this is okay. So you've got to always think about your opponent's most dangerous and best moves. Now, a lot of people in the chat are either saying take on c3 or take on a3. Now, in a position like this, material is not that important. Checkmate is. So which of these moves is more dangerous to us as white? Which move is more dangerous to white in this position? Taking on c3 or taking on a3? And you just got to think logically. You've got to back all this up with calculation normally as well. We're not going to do that because we don't have a lot of time for the stream. But which one is more dangerous, taking on c3 or a3? And this should be a move that you should all be able to answer, really. And I think most of you have now got this right. Taking on c3 wins material, but after bishop takes c3, I feel that white's king is actually quite well defended. The bishop's defending. This rook's a very good defender, c2, and the bishop has done a great job of defending everything, yeah? And I don't think black can attack here. Nothing works here. You're defending c2, so this is not good. So in this position, I think black is simply losing. So black must take on a3 because this creates threats. And in a position we evaluated earlier on, that it's all about timing here. Any move that gains you more time, black's knight h5 gained him time. Pawn takes here is gain time, because let's say now, for example, what should we play here? Pawn takes g5. What move should black now play here? Let me just make sure I've got the right thing. This is getting very complicated. Now, can black win this position immediately? I've just got to work this out as well. Yes, this is winning. But don't just give me one move, give me the combination, because if white has time to take this and take here, white's going to be winning. But it's black's turn now. So how is black winning in this position? And there is actually quite a simple move, because at the moment, time-wise, white doesn't have a threat. White doesn't have one check. So you've actually got one spare move here as black to create the attack. How can black create the attack? So give me 2 moves here. Okay, I'm going to see if anyone who's the first to get the right answer. People who are just saying pawn takes pawn, load of rubbish, because you're only giving me 1 move. You need to calculate more than 1 move ahead. That might be the right move, but what's your follow-up? This is what I said at the start of this lesson. Don't just give me random moves. Oh, that one, let's check. Give me a variation. You can't just give random moves in a game of chess. You can't just give random moves in a game of chess. And remember, timing is very important. Timing is very important. I mean, you can try to get a queen, as someone's saying, but even if you get a queen, I might just be mating you. I'm going here and I'm checkmating, so you've got to work out your timing here. I think this is too slow to try to get a queen. For example, if you go here, I might just, not that one, I want to open up the H-file, I might just take here. If you get another queen, so what? I come here. And I don't think you're going to stop my queen coming to these 2 squares. Checkmate. I don't think this is working. So we need to go back, and you need to think of something quicker in this position. So push the pawns has a nice answer there. If I miss your answer, I apologize. Obviously, I'm doing my best to look at everything, but I might miss some of the suggestions that you're giving. And I think the first move is clear. You have to take on this square. And then king b1 is the key move. Because if the king comes this way, we do then have time to create more threats because we got that check in. So Aldo and anyone else who's got this, you've got the right answer. If you suggested pawn takes pawn here, and now let's say king b1, because obviously one defensive technique that you can use in chess is using your opponent's pawn as a defensive piece. And in this position, white's trying to use the b2 pawn as a defensive piece. Now, if you have time here as white, you will be taken on g6. So you want to, in this position, try to create as many threats as you can. And I think the move now, queen to this square, is simply winning. Because there's no way to stop this move unless I'm missing something. This is just easily winning. As far as I can see. I don't see what white can do here. So this is actually the easiest way. Now, push the pawn recommended a very interesting line with this one. And the point is, if bishop takes, bishop a2 takes b1. So try to follow the analysis. So this is also looking interesting to me, because I don't know if there's a way to stop bishop a to this square. I'm just wondering if I can do something like this, but that's nonsense. So maybe this is winning as well, but it's a little bit more complicated. For example, bishop takes here, check, here, we go queen, you go here, and then here check, here, and then there are numerous checkmates in this position. So maybe that's winning as well. So it's clear to see, I think if we go back a little bit, that after knight to h5, bishop takes g7, b takes this one here, white hasn't got time to take this knight. He hasn't got time to take this knight. If queen takes c3, what can white play? Maybe queen takes c3 is winning as well, Aldo. It looks winning to me, I would say, in that position. And this whole idea of taking on h5 is too slow. We can have a look at it again in that last line. If we now play takes here and the king comes to one of these 2 squares, this is quite interesting, but I feel like it's just winning. If you go to this square, I queen with check, and I'm going to open up here. This is clearly winning because white doesn't even have a threat. And if you go to this square here, then I might even have time to play king takes bishop. Because as I said, white needs one more tempo to make a threat. Hello, Frozen Edge. Yeah, it is a complicated one today because this is a major threat. So I think this is just quite easily winning for black. But this is why we're starting with a very hard example to start at the hardest and move our way in. But actually, This comes down to very basic principles, and we'll talk about then what you can learn from this afterwards. Now, what could therefore be a defensive try after pawn takes here? Because a lot of these positions were relying on black going queen a5. Maybe you'll agree. So what move can maybe, and you've got to again try to find the best defensive moves, attacking moves of both sides. In this position, what could be a good defensive try for white? Because now white is defending. So what could white now try to defend this position? Any suggestions? You've got to find the best defense as well as the best attack. Well done, a Manion. Yeah, queen g5. Because as well as trying to defend queen a5, you're now also creating queen coming to h8 as a deadly threat. So again, if black tries this a2 move, which a lot of you wanted to play, but it's too slow, well, rook takes h5 might win, but this one is probably even easier. And there's no good way you can stop this. You could try f6, but then I'd take on this square and it must be winning. It must be winning somehow. So this a2 move is too slow. So what is the winning idea here? Well, again, we should take on b2 and now king to b1. And what should black now play in this position? What should black now play? And I think we've already come to take the bishop. What, queen h8 checkmate in that position? Unless I'm missing something. What should be played now? Now bishop a2, I go knight takes a2, and the rook on h2 defends c2. So this one doesn't work now because the knight takes. This is why you needed the queen here, so the queen could sacrifice itself. And you can't go queen takes here because the rook takes c2. So have a think about your moves before you suggestion. Well, you can go king takes here, but then can't I go rook takes or pawn takes there? It looks very dangerous, king takes g7. If rook takes, you might go bishop a2 then, that's correct. Maybe it's still complicated after pawn takes. There's a better move here. This, I mean, you could go king takes bishop, you're right, Aldo, but as I said earlier on, if you can attack, you should always try to attack. So someone's already suggested the move here. And Frederic PR2 has got the move, and the correct move here is to get rid of the defender of a2. So it is a very complicated position. We're starting a very tough one. So this knight is defending that, and what we want to play is now queen takes c3. And the point of this idea is it's immediately decisive because there's no way to stop bishop to a2. And this is much better than doing a defensive move because it's all about timing. This whole position is all about timing. For example, now if bishop takes c3, it doesn't matter what you play. Yes, black has lost the queen, but now the knight does not defend that square. So we can force through pawn here, queen, because the rook is blocked in by the bishop. And you can play bishop a2 check, king takes, and then you go queen here. And this position, again, is just checkmate in a couple of moves. Rook takes c3, king here, and we can even do this checkmate, for example. So the lesson to be learned in this position, let's go all the way back to the original position. And Vukovic, in his Art of the Attack, this is one of the hardest examples in his whole book. Generally, his book was quite for more low-rated players than this, and we'll have a look at that. So if you're finding this very hard, it will get a bit easier later on. But I want to start with this one, and queen h4 is therefore a mistake. Because if you play queen h4 in this position, you're losing time. And after knight to h5, it's now white who is defending. So if we go back to this position, Vukovic without a computer came to the conclusion that queen h4 is too slow. So what is maybe now a better move? Because we don't want to allow this knight to sacrifice itself. Anyone else got a suggestion for white in the original position, this position here? And there is a move here where white is winning. and I'll give you all a chance to have a go at this. Now, taking on f6 does not help. I think black will be winning. Pawn takes, and the king can always run to e6. This move is just not working. I mean, pawn takes, and my king can come here. You're not getting rid of the major defending piece. So have a think about it. A lot of you suggesting just one moves. This is not how you're going to improve. Try to have an idea. Try to have an idea behind your moves. Don't just suggest the first move that comes to your mind. You have to have a reason. If you want to suggest one move and give me a good reason for it, then that's okay. But if you don't have a reason, you don't have a reason. If you go check here, queen h6, my bishop just comes back to g7. Doesn't work. For example, this is just losing for white. The bishop just comes back here. This should have been easy to spot because it's the only move that black has. And again, in positions of desperation, you've got to try to find the only move. So it's not that move. Bishop a6, far too slow. You're playing on the wrong area of the board. This position is all about who checkmates who first. If we don't checkmate the king over here on g8, we are going to lose. So we can't play on the other side of the board. We have to go for this one. So a couple of you have got the right suggestion. I'm just giving everyone a chance to try and understand this position as much as you can. And most of you are now coming to the right move. And the right move here is queen to h6. And if we think about this in principle, this is the right move, even if you can't calculate it, for two main reasons. Number one, you don't have time to play the slower approach, queen to h4, as we've seen. Number two, what is the key piece that defends black in these positions? The key piece is the bishop on g7. And often in these structures, as you'll get to know if you buy the course and if you play the dragon, certain openings, the King's Indian defense sometimes, maybe the Perk defense more, the bishop on g7 is the key defender of the black king. And this stops all these ideas. So if we can get rid of the key defenders, the only other defender is the knight, but that's not so important. We want to get rid of the bishop on g7. If we can get rid of that bishop, then we have great winning chances. And we can even sacrifice our queen to do that. Now, the first thing we should note after this is timing was urgent. So black, can he take on a3 now? Well, I hope you can all see why he can't take on a3. Did you remember the tactic we showed earlier? What is the tactic that we looked earlier? You should all see it now. Queen to h8 check. And now, again, we're trying to get rid of the key defender. We're using this bishop. And when you're attacking, 3 pieces is often the magic number. King here, and this one is checkmate. The knight cannot take it because it's pinned. And the king can't take it because of the rook. So if you go back to this position, black doesn't have time to get his attack going. So what else can black play? Well, let's have a look at knight h5. It worked before, but does it work now? So in the last position, this was a very good move because it held up the attack. But what can white play now? Quite easy way to win now. And again, it's to do with the key defensive piece. Yes, Jeptar, quite easy. We've got to get rid of this one. Queen takes here. It's not checkmate, but it will be next move because we have double power. We've got rid of the key defensive piece. This one is checkmate. Guving Kurt, your move may have been strong, but you should always be looking for the most forcing moves. And by the most forcing moves, in the positions like this, that is clearly checks and captures. That is second best to checks. And queen takes g7 is much better as well because the key defensive piece is this bishop. This is the piece you need to get rid of. So knight h5 does not work. So what about the only other possibility? Because queen h8 is now coming, and the only other possibility is to accept the queen. So bishop takes h6 check, And now we're going to take on h6. And it looks like the rooks are coming to these two squares winning. And by the way, this is not over, this puzzle, by any means. Now, I have to admit, if I was in the original position, we'll come back to this position, and I was trying to work out whether queen h6 works or not, I'm not sure if I'd be able to calculate this all the way to checkmate, because it gets complicated. But there's a couple of cheat things you can do. If you can't calculate all the way to the end in a complex situation, if you can see a perpetual check somewhere, then you can cheat a little bit, because a draw's not the end of the world in a position like this. So you can get to the position where you have at least a draw, and then you can rethink. It might be a bit clearer because you played a couple of moves. So for example, what I mean by that is after queen h6, bishop takes, rook takes, there's only one move black has to stop the rooks coming to these two squares. And I think Aldo has mentioned the move. So what is the move, Aldo? I think you mentioned the move. We have said before that the king can't do a self-defense thing. It can't go here because we have check, take the knight, and then checkmate. For example, we looked at this a little bit earlier. If you're just joining in, this is checkmate here. Aldo, you are right. That is the only defensive move. The only defensive move is to give the black king as many squares to defend itself as it can. And the only move is g5. Because now the king wants to come to g3. But if I was going to think about whether in the original position queen s6 was the move, I know now that I have a perpetual check. Because I can go, if I want to draw, check, king here, check, you can't take that, here, check, and I have at least a draw. So what I would do, I would get to this position on the board. I mean, okay, I should be able to calculate this as a GM, but I'm telling you little cheat methods to help your calculation. And I'd think, and I'd recalculate the position here. And there is a way that white can win. And of course, you do need to back up everything with calculation in a real game. This is why when we're doing these streams, it's a little bit artificial. This is why blitz chess is very artificial compared to what I say proper chess is. Chess where you can think about things, the traditional way of playing. We all love blitz chess, don't get me wrong. But in order to calculate long variations, only the best in the world can do that. I can calculate long variations, but I need a lot of time to do that. And remember, please don't just suggest one move here. You need to give me a variation here. And in this position, I think you'd find the right move by thinking logically and then backing that up with calculation. So what I mean by that is, this is the square the black king is trying to get to. So can we, now if we go back to the scale, do checks help? If checks don't help, you look at the next thing, captures. Well, you don't really have time to do captures here because you're a queen down. So then you must be looking at threats. How can you create threats in this position? I've got another rule that I use very often, and I think it's a very useful rule. And my rule is when you're attacking, first of all, look at your pieces which are active. So in this position, it's the two rooks and the bishops and the bishop. Now, if I try to do anything with those pieces, it's going to be a draw. This check does not help because the king can come here. It's just a draw, actually, funnily enough. And we'll look at some variations of this later on. Now, my rule is, if you can't do anything with your active pieces, you should look at ways to bring in reinforcements and to create threats. So one line that someone's giving here, I see in the chat, is rook h8, rook h7, king g6, check, king here. Okay, that's a draw. Now there is another move here. What about rook takes f6? Well, rook takes f6 is a very good try because that's a very forcing move. And lots of people are saying rook takes f6 when, of course, if black now helps you out and takes that rook back, black is going to be winning. For example, white is going to be winning because the bishop comes here and there's no way to stop that. But you're assuming that your opponent's going to play the worst move here. There is a way that black can defend in this position. how can black defend in this position? This is a very nice idea. So whoever suggested this idea, you're right, but you're not assuming your opponent's best defensive moves. But I like your thinking. You're looking at a forcing capture. You're looking at your moves, which are the most aggressive. But you know, there is a defensive idea here. Anyone see what the defensive idea is here? Well, is pawn takes pawn good enough? I'm not sure if that one's good enough. Is it good enough? If I go check here, king here, maybe good enough. The move I think is the best move here is to go bishop c4. Now the reason for that is that I can play e5, and this is a very important defensive move because it blocks this bishop. Now if you take on a3, maybe white can be winning here somehow because you don't have this e5 move, and white has this rook h8, king g7. Is there a win there? Is there a win? I can't see it, but it looks very risky to me. I don't know if there's a win here. Is there a win here? I can't work out everything, obviously. Is white winning here? This is one very nice idea, but again, you've got to assume your opponent's best defensive try. You don't take the rook here, because if you take the rook, white can now checkmate. I'll give you all the chance to see how. And again, this is a very tricky puzzle, but you've got to double check, and then you've got a rook in the corner. You can go double check. The black king only has one square, and then the rook comes here. An amazing checkmate. But again, you're assuming that black is playing the worst defensive move. After check here, black can go here. And I don't know if white is winning in this position, unless I'm missing something. I can't see the win. Quite amazing position. I can't see it. I could be missing something, but it looks like only a draw because the rook comes back and it has to check on these two squares to get a draw. Check, for example, check f6. I don't see a win here. I think you have to go check, and it's probably a draw. Yes, okay, but I mean, I think a safer move for black, rather than grabbing after rook takes f6, might have given the game away there. After rook takes f6 here, a better move is bishop c4, because now black has this extra move e5, and maybe black is even winning. For example, rook h8 check, you can't take it for the same reason we saw before, king g7, and now if you try to get a draw like this, black can actually play e5, and the king can now run to e7 in either variation, and the king is going to be safe on e7, and it's going to be winning for black because you can't checkmate here. So the move is about bringing in the reinforcement, and the reinforcement is bishop d3. And in actual fact, this move seems very hard to see, but if you think about it logically, if we try any forcing moves with these three pieces, it's not working. So we need to look at bringing in reinforcements, and we need to look at bringing in reinforcements that cover or at least try to threaten the square the king's going to. And this now leads to more complications. Very hard one to start us off here. I can't believe this has taken an hour just to go through this one thing, but that's what chess is. Chess is hard. Now, let's first of all say, for example, pawn takes a3 now. Now, how do we checkmate now? How do we checkmate now? And this is actually quite easy. Now you should be able to see the power of having the bishop on this square. Hello, Bjorn. How you doing? All right, hopefully. Hope you're having a good day. Speaking earlier, weren't we? Yeah. Okay, so these moves are very hard to find. You are right. After this, it's going to get a lot easier. But I'm just starting with a very hard one to get us, get your mind working as hard as you can. But maybe you can now find the checkmate. And it's to do with this square here. So hopefully a lot of you can find the checkmate. Jepta, well done. Everyone else has got this, well done. And this is why we brought in the reinforcements, because of this square. And now we can go check. The king has to go here. We bring in another rook check. The knight can't take it, is pinned. And after the king goes here, now we unleash this bishop by playing check here. And we're going to take anything in the way, and it will be checkmate. As hopefully you can see. Hopefully you can see in this position. So black has to be very careful about defending. Can black defend here? Well, let's try some other moves. I'm going to see if any of you can find the right way to do it. So what if bishop c4? We looked at this move before. And this one is a much better defensive try. But white can force checkmate through checks. And I think it's checkmate in 6 moves. Can anyone give me the whole variation now where it's checkmate? If you can, who's going to be the first? Who's going to be the first? The idea of this move is to try to take off the bishop on d3. But white can checkmate. Who's going to solve this the fastest? Think about it. And I want the whole variation. Don't just give me one move. It's not going to help. Use your minds. It's a bit like Puzzle Rush, but you've got a grandmaster telling you what you should be thinking of. So this is like going to improve your tactical and attacking skills. And to be honest, look, you're getting a free lesson off a grandmaster. Normally that's like about £100 an hour, which is a complete, bit too much. Just buy the bloody course if you're going to do that. You get 30 hours of me. So can anyone find the force checkmate here? It's not easy. It's not easy, but every move is a check. I'm giving you, hope I've got that right. Yes, it is. Every move is a check. Anyone going to solve this? It's not the same moves because bishop takes d3 will get rid of that bishop. Well done, Max Chess. And the right solution is rook h8 check. The king comes here, and now we go rook here check here. We go e5. Now this was checkmate before, but in this position black can get rid of this one. And now the amazing idea is we go check here. It's very hard, guys, but it's very beautiful to watch. King here, and now pawn takes f6 check. Whoa! And after that one, we've basically brought our pawn into the attack. Look at that for a weird checkmate position. Look at that. It's a really weird checkmate, isn't it? You're like creating a little square around your enemy's king. You boxed it in. That was tough. That was tough. Okay, now let's go back. So bishop c4. Now, if you're in what everyone should be doing in this position is you should try to work this out. And if you get better at chess, you practice more, you do more things like this, you get in a position where you'll be able to calculate things like this. It takes a long time, maybe like 10 years, 5 years, depending how much you do. But this is using what I'm doing now, a very simple calculation thing. Well, not simple, it's just what we call a process of elimination. So what that means is, if before I was playing bishop d3, if I was white here, before I play this move, because I have a draw, I'd be thinking, well, if I go bishop d3, how can my opponent defend? And I'd be looking at one of his moves one by one. So I might start by looking at what happens if he takes here, but we worked that one out first, and we worked out we were checkmating there. So I would then eliminate b takes e3 from my calculation, and then I'd look at the next move, and I might look, okay, what if he tries to get rid of my bishop there? And we've just seen that white's checkmating there, so I'd eliminate that move. And this is before I move my bishop to this square. And you go through all of black's options, you eliminate all of his options, and then you double check your calculation. And this will probably take like half an hour in a real game to do. Some people like Hikaru, maybe a couple of minutes, but we're not all Hikaru. And then if you think you're still winning, only then do you play bishop d3. So you use the tool, the process of elimination. Don't get your calculation mixed up. Stick with one move of your opponent's, work that one out and move on. So we're going to do that now. So the next move I want to see if you can find an answer to is d5. How about this move? And this one is a bit easier, I would say. A little bit easier, but it's still tricky because in this case the knight wants to come to e4. So how can we try to checkmate here? And if you can do it with checks, which you should do. What about that? So, okay, so this is another one. So before I play bishop d3, I'd want to eliminate d5. Now, who's going to work this one out the quickest? What is the best line to checkmate in this position? What is the best way to checkmate here? Well, bishop f6, I just take it. I don't see the point. And the king can come to e7. You're guessing. You're guessing. Bishop f6, not correct. Try to do it by forcing moves. Remember, in positions like this, you should always be looking at the checks, the captures. Now, this is a capture, so okay, it's not a bad idea, but a check is much stronger than a capture, especially when you've got these bishops lined up this way. I mean, that sounds like Charlie the cat screaming, so I'm just going to have a look at that. You can work that out. I'll be back in a sec. Bit of cat drama going on there. Just a quick run. Charlie the chess cat was screaming there. So, God, I need to do more exercise. This lockdown. I haven't done enough exercise. Been working too much. Okay, so anyone work this out? Well done, ringed. Anyone else who got this? The way to do this is to check on h8, and after king g7, check here. King g6. Now we've got to work out the best way of doing this. Now, if you play pawn to e5 check, as we did before, knight e4 might give black some defensive tries. Now, you can take this, threatening to take here, but I'm wondering if black can defend here maybe, because you've always got f5. The best way to do it is to actually, as ringed has said, just take that pawn with check, because it's checkmate very soon. Whatever piece comes to these two squares, we're going to take it again, it's checkmate. So that's the simplest way of doing it. Okay, so then again, before you play this move bishop d3, and if you forget your variations that you're thinking about, you have to start again, and you have to go through the variations from this position, because remembering that line after d5, you might forget, so you have to do it again. You have to do it again. And with that line, you can eliminate this one, and this one. What else? And the final move we'll look at before we move on to a bit of an easier example is going to be bishop takes g4. Now, this one is maybe the hardest, because black is trying to play this move, and black is trying to play bishop f5. So, can anyone? Well, I'll make it a bit easier. Obviously, we go for these checks first, and we play e4 check. Now, in this position, first question, what is black's best defensive move here? What is black's best defensive move in this position? Black has a choice between knight e4 and bishop f5. Now, which one is better? Now, if bishop f5, we have a checkmate pattern that we just saw. So one thing you've got to do to try to get better, you've got to try to remember the patterns, as Maz Chess has just done. Maz Chess, well done. You remembered the pattern that you worked out. And the pattern we saw was taking here with check and bishop f6. Can you remember that pattern? It's very hard, this one. So this is a very high level, like grandmaster, I'd say, example. And here, if we go check, king here, we saw this pattern before. Can you remember it? Where we took here and we take here with checkmate. And we saw this quite weird pattern, but that is checkmate. So after e5 check, the only move is knight to h4. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. if it wasn't tricky enough already. What is the best way to do this? Well, taking here is not so clear now. Do I play f5 or not? Can I now play this move? Because if you check, I don't have the same tactic. And if you check here, I can go here. And I think even black might be winning this position. Is black winning here? I think black is winning because I've got rook takes h8. Very complicated. But black has definitely helped his chances because we can't take on f6. So rook h6 check first is correct. Now we have two options and we'll look at them before we move on to a much easier one. If you find this very hard, it is. Now, first of all, after this one, if king g7, what is the way to play this one? Well, I'm going to show you this one. We'll make it a little bit easier so we can move on to another puzzle. e6 check, f6, and now this check, king here, and now, in actual fact, and this is why I'm going to move, we just take that bishop. And there's no way to stop rook g6 and rook g8, rook h8, easily here. And also the other threat is check, check, bishop takes e4, mate. So, for example, if you take my knight, this is the other way I'm going to try to mate you, like we've been doing before. This checkmate. And again, this is very, very complicated stuff. So, yeah, this is winning. So the last question, we're going to move on because I think we've been on this one for far too long now. But let's say the king comes to f5. What is the quickest way to checkmate here? And who's going to get this first? Quickest way to checkmate. It is quite a hard puzzle. But I'm going to go, before we move on after this, this is from, this is from The Art of the Attack. All the examples I'm using today are from this last course I've done. It's not a course I made up. I just did the videos for it. I can't take the credit. As I said at the start of the stream, it was Vladimir Vukovic who made all these examples. So it's very nice. But now I'm now I'm just like, you know, I know a lot about the course, so I think I've improved my attacking chess quite a lot. Yeah, well done to Ben Bingling and Jepter. Jepter's doing very well. Ringed, and it is now bishop takes here, and this is a very nice checkmate. They say the hardest moves to find in chess are the backward knight moves, and this move is a backward knight move, but it's a pretty strong one because it's checkmate. Boom! Put that in your pipe and smoke it, son. Okay, so before we move on, this all started with this idea in this complicated position. What does white play? If this was me, I would not be able to calculate all that unless it was a very good day, and I would realise that queen h4 is too slow. But I'd be able to calculate some of the lines with queen h6. I would know that I had a draw there. As we've seen, I think it's quite easy to calculate in this position. Black has to play g5, and we have a draw by just going blah, 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 blah. So I'd probably get to this position, and then I would hope I use what I call the right formula for working out. Look at the checks first. Well, they're not working because the king can come here. Look at the captures. They're not working because black can move the bishop and go here. So then I think, well, my three pieces that are active, bishop and rooks, they're not working on their own. So I'd think at moving into reinforcements. And when the king comes to g6, I want to be able to attack that. So I'd then hopefully find the move bishop d3. And I'd be calculating all the moves with bishop d3. So that's how I hope I would solve that one. And that's kind of the thought processes you need to do in an incredibly complex position. Now, the next one is a lot easier, and they're all a lot easier now. And we're just going to give you some examples, see how you get on. So the next one is, and I think we'll flip the board. We'll look at it from black side. When I say easier, this is from a real game, and this actually was from a Dutch. And this game was... It's black to play and win. Let's see if anyone can find a whole solution. Try to have a go at this. We got a lot of various puzzles here. This was Kotov versus Bondareski, Leningrad, 1936. They're all from the Art of the Attack course. You could all. It's on 50% off at the moment. My videos are quite expensive, but they're worth it. You get 30 hours of my videos. 30 hours. And this one was from a Dutch. You can see it's a Dutch stone wall. And it was actually the reason I picked this one. I knew about this game before the book. And I picked it because it turned me on to playing the Dutch. I saw this one and I thought, oh yeah, I'm liking a bit of that Dutch action. Well done, Chess Master. We'll give everyone else a go. A go at solving it. Try not to look at other people's answers. This is hard, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Obviously, you've got lots of people at different levels, you know, trying to solve the puzzles here. So some of you won't find this. This one is actually. I said they were easy. It's not easy. That's a complete lie. This is still bloody hard. This is really hard still. They do get easier, but I'm trying to make them hard today. For some reason, you know, so you can test yourself. You want to be able to test yourself, yeah? And the correct answer, you've got to now again go through the formula. You've got to look for the checks first. And if the checks work, and we should be trying to, of course, smother that king, then you don't need to look at anything else. And this move check seems very natural because it diverts the knight away from f2. And we'd love to get our queen into f2. So the knight is now diverted away from f2 so we can get our most powerful piece in. It's generally very hard to checkmate without the queen getting involved. But now the queen gets involved. The king goes here, and this is the second part to the puzzle. And this is, again, quite tough. But you've got to be looking for the checks first, the most forcing moves. And in this position, if you don't do something immediately, again, this is about timing. If you don't, you know, is it very urgent to find the right move here? Well, yes, it is. Because if you don't find the right move urgently, you will lose this position. So you've got to now get rid of that defender. And this also frees up a piece to come into this square. White has to take that one. And now you've got to try and checkmate with these three pieces. And bishop c5 check is the right way to go because you've got to take this square away. If you tried to go in the other way, your opponent's king has two squares. So when you're trying to checkmate and look at these, you can always think, well, what square do I go to where he has the least escape squares? If you go here, he only has one escape square. Because our knight covers that one and our bishop covers that one. And after this, it's checkmate in one move. It's a very nice checkmate. It is knight takes e5 checkmate. As I said before, this was a game played in Leningrad, 1936. Kotov versus Bonareski. And it was a very nice game. This is like how you got mated yesterday. Yeah, thanks, Aldo. You're bringing back the shakes. No. In my Titled Tuesday. Yeah, I did play the Titled Tuesday event yesterday. And I got mated in a very nice way. I have to say. Meaning it was really horrible. It was a horrible way. Oh, it was horrible. Oh. Thank you for the cheers, push the pawns. Okay, now another easy one. Well, I say easy, but let's have a go at this one. Now, I'll just put you on another screen because I'm not sure I have this one. Oh, okay. Yes, I do. Okay, sorry. Now, this one's quite famous, and again, this comes in the course. This is white to play and win, and what makes this one more famous? It was Alekhine, ex-world champion Alekhine versus Felt, and it was from a blindfold simultaneous display in 1916. So can you imagine it? It was blindfold simultaneous. Now, what is the correct way to continue this one? And this might, by the way, if you watch my YouTube channel, you might have the solution to some of these. So you might have the solution to some of them. And so what is the correct way of doing this? And again, what you should be looking for in this position, and one thing the book talks about above, is focal points of attack. So what I mean by that is what squares in your opponent's position are weak, and that's where you try to concentrate your forces on. So we can see here that e6 is very weak, and we should of course try to do something on e6. But then what else is weak about our opponent's position? Well, f6 is weak because he can't defend that square. Which of our pieces are active? Remember, you should be looking at your active pieces. Well, we have the knights are very good because they can sort of jump in, and the queen. So I'd be concentrating on using these 3 pieces against these 2 squares here, if I could, you know. What other colours can we get? Can we get any other colours? Oh, come on, there must be other colours. So we start by playing knight to f7, and this is trying, and this is a very beautiful display of Alekhine's, and this is trying to draw the king out. Now, like I say, you might have seen this on my YouTube channel yesterday, and after here, this move looks very tempting, but if we go check, the black king can kind of survive here. There's a much better way of doing it, and remember, always look for the most forcing moves, and this bishop is also part to the attack. Always look at ways you can try to draw your opponent's king out into the open, and this was an amazing move that Alekhine played. And the point is, and that is a boom, move. You do, if you play that in a game, you should say boom. That makes me cough because I smoke too much, but you get the idea. Boom! Put that in your pipe, son. Because after this one, look at that for a beautiful checkmate. A beautiful checkmate on the king. And I mean, if you played this check here, like I said, this move does defend for black and it takes longer. The point is, if we go here and black now plays here, we can take this one quicker because our queen is attacking it, and it leads to a quicker checkmate. One thing I should note, you've always got to look for other options. If the black king goes here, what is a very simple way to win this one? Very simple way to checkmate here. Well, we just bring our knight in here. Knights and queens coordinate extremely well together, and there's no way to stop queen to f7 checkmate. Well, you can go here, but I will take that one with anything, and I'll go here next move. Okay, now the last, I'm just gonna end today with 2 more examples. I had lots more saved, but I think we'll do that for another day. And the next example I want to show you is, I think, one of the easier ones. Now, I'm going to explain the way Vukovic explains it in his own words, but this one was Capablanca versus Nimzovich. But if you know the game Bobby Fischer versus Benko, you might get this one, and you might know this one. Thank you, anyone, by the way, who's subscribed that I miss or anything like that. It's very kind of you. And one thing I do talk about, which I'm not going into much here, is all these weak squares, what you do in the course. So if you do buy the course, you have a better idea about this. But Vukovic, and let's just tell you some of his words here, because he says, and this is Vukovic, the author, the sacrifice. I can't do it. I can't do it. I think he's from, I don't know, where's he from? Yugoslavia. I don't really know Yugoslavian voice, but I'll try. The sacrifice in the attack on the castle king, and there's loads of chapters in just how to win when your opponent's king is castled. Before we turn to the role of the pawns in the attack on the castle king, a few general remarks must be made about sacrifices in the castled area. Certain combinational elements are present in the case of every sacrifice, though these sacrifices must be widely diverging types. Now, I think basically I'll try to make what he says a bit simpler. You know, when you're trying to sacrifice pieces against your opponent's king, you've got to do it for a reason, to do with certain squares and certain themes. It's often to do, if it's going to work, how the pawns are in front of your opponent's king, and whether a sacrifice changes the structure of the pawns, or aims to draw the king onto a square where it can be attacked. Or the other thing he goes a lot on about is about something he calls focal points. So what squares in this position around your opponent's king should you be concentrating on? And earlier on, we saw in the last example, we saw the focal points of these two squares. Well, in this position, you've got to work out which is the weakest square. Because if you're going to try to checkmate your opponent, you've got to try to work out which square to do it on. And in this 7, the focal point, as Vukovic talks about, is h7. Because we've got 2 knights which can head towards that square, and we've got a bishop that can head towards that square. G7, we can't get any pieces to. Neither of these knights or bishops can get to G7. So we've got to concentrate our pieces on the focal point, which is H7. When you're trying to attack, trying to work out where your opponent's focal points are. And then he goes on to say, a sacrifice can either simply annihilate one of the pawns in front of the king, or it can deflect the pawn onto another file, or finally, it can cause it to be remove the blockade. The main use of a sacrifice in the attack on the castle king is to eliminate the pawns in the castling area, and a number of examples will be devoted to this. And this is his first example. And the whole course, I talk about a lot of examples he has. But here, that's the focal point. How do we get to it? Well, we go knight to G5. And this is diverting this pawn away, but we're creating a threat of checkmate, so it has to be taken. And now we threaten H7 again, but the most important thing here, we're using a blockading technique. We're blockading the pawn on F7. The only move to stop this is bishop takes F6, and then the final piece comes in, and black has no way to now stop checkmate. And this deflected a pawn away, and it also blockaded a pawn. This is what this combination did. Now, I don't know if in a real chess situation you'd be thinking, oh, I do that move to divert, to blockade. But you can use these kind of techniques to get nearer to working out what the right move is. So, for example, H7, the focal point, how do you attack that? And this reminded me of a very famous example, one of the first tactics I ever saw. Maybe you've seen this before, but one thing you've got to do when you're trying to improve your chess is try to remember patterns, ideas which you like. So this idea, I think Bobby Fischer might have seen. This was a very famous game, Capablanca versus Nimzovich, and it was to do with using the F6 square, this is the way I see it, to put your opponent's piece on this square so he can't move his F pawn to blockade, and also to attack the H7 square. So you might be thinking, okay, well, how does that relate to a real game situation? Well, okay, let me just make sure I've got the right position. I hope I have. And, oh, no, I don't. Okay, we'll go back. And this position now occurred. Okay, so we're getting this position here in the game between Bobby Fischer and Paul Benko. And they got to this position, and it was Bobby Fischer to play. And if you can remember the last example, you should be able to work this one out. Now, what is the key thing? Where is the focal point? So let's think about this in Vukovic terms. The focal point, is it G7 on H7? What square do you want to checkmate on? Well, it's not G7 because you're not even attacking that square. It's clearly H7 because you have 2 potential pieces attacking H7. But if we try to threaten H7 straight away and checkmate, our opponent can play F5. And he's offering the exchange of queens, and he blocks our attack. So maybe Bobby Fischer had seen the last example. What move here blockades, like Capablanca, the F pawn from moving, so that we can stop the main defensive idea. So in order to find the right moves, you need to realize what your opponent's best defensive moves are. Now, if you haven't solved this yet, let's just go back again to this one. Now, what did we do in this example? We had to get a knight to F6 because it was all about this F pawn moving. So we went knight here, takes, and we want to get our bishop here, but we've got to stop F5. So we put our knight on F6 to block the F pawn. You can see how these concepts are coming together. Bishop takes f6, and now bishop to e4 wins. So let's go back to Bobby Fischer. What does Bobby Fischer do to stop the f pawn from going? Everyone have a think about this. You should all be able to solve this now. Well, I say all, it's obviously still quite tricky. The focal point is h7. We want to try to attack this one. So we want to be able to play e5. But we cannot allow our opponent to move the f pawn, because then we might have to exchange queens off, and you're not going to be able to checkmate your opponent's king without your queen in most situations. So we cannot allow him to play f5. So what is the move? The move, of course, is this rook f6 move. And this is a lovely example of what I call an empty square sacrifice. When you're playing chess, you normally sacrifice. You normally do it in a very violent way where you crash through on a certain square. So you do it, boom! You do it on a square where your opponent has a piece. But this one, we do it for a different reason. A mouse slip, I like it. Max Chess, the mouse slip tactic. Very clever. And actually I can see that we have, oh no, that's not Bobby Fischer, that's Macau Tao, my favourite player. Is that Gary Kasparov? Let's see if we can pick his nose. Come on, Gary. Oh no, my hand's going out. Okay, we'll give his head a rub for a little bit of luck. But this is just trying to stop your opponent's best defensive move. When you're attacking, you've got to think about your opponent's best defensive moves. And it was f5. By playing this move, Bobby Fischer won a very impressive game. Because now, if black takes this one, we play e5. We see the focal point of our attack is this square. And there's no way that black can now stop queen coming here, checkmate. He can put his knight in the way, so what? We'll take it. We'll get rid of that knight. And he can't move the f-pawn, because pawns can't jump over bishops, you know. You could, if you're black here, you could try sneezing and you go, whoa! You know, well, maybe don't sneeze in your opponent's face nowadays. That could be consigned as a little bit rude. But you could go, ah! And move the pawn there and hope he doesn't notice. But in actual fact, that is going to be checkmate. So this very nice move, rook f6, is just going to play e5 and checkmate. And the game now continued. King g8. Black tries to run away, but he's got too many pieces in the way. And after e5, there's only one way black can now try to defend this one, and that is with h6. But Bobby just played a very simple and nice move here. And if you haven't got anything immediate to win, then you should probably look for ways to bring in the reinforcements, as we talked about earlier. So what should white play here? Okay, now you should look for the most forcing move. So I would be looking at rook takes h6 first. But if that move does not work and we can't do anything with our most aggressive pieces, we should try to bring in reinforcements. So what is the correct move to play here? And after the next move, black resigned. But you still got to be careful. You've played a nice attack, but you can still throw it away here. Well, after rook takes h6, what is black going to play? What is black's best defensive move? We talked about it earlier. What is black's best defensive move there? It is f5. Remember, if you allow the f-pawn to move, you might have to swap the queens off. And if you swap the queens off, you're not going to checkmate. And checkmate ends the game. So no point messing about swapping queens off here. Let's try to checkmate. So I don't want to move that rook, because actually, okay, it looks aggressive. There's a very nice checkmate if here. How could white checkmate if queen takes pawn here? White has a very nice checkmate in this position. But this is assuming your opponent plays the worst defense. And you should never assume he plays the worst defense. You should always assume they play the best defense. Yes, rook h8. And again, you're going for what Vukovic in this book, this classic book, The Art of Attack, calls the main focal point. And after this one, beautiful checkmate there. And when you do that to your opponent, what do you say? What do you say, people? What do you say when you do that to your opponent? What do you say? What do you say? What do you say? Well, I'll just give you a little reminder if you don't know what you say. You just give you a little reminder. You say, put that in your pipe and smoke it, son. That's what you say. If you're able to do that in a real game, you've got to say that to your opponent. It's the only way of doing it. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, son. That's what you say. Just in case you're wondering. Ginger Bunny. That was actually me in another life, Aldo. It was me in another life. Thank you. Rad graphics. The guy who animated that. I don't know. He really disappeared, unfortunately, but he was cool, man. He was cool. Anyway, so that would be nice, but the problem is, if you go Rook H6, going back to the chess, we have to think of our opponent's best move, and F5 allows this one. So if we go back to the rule we talked about at the start of this mini lesson, is if you can't do anything with your active pieces, so you can't do anything, your queen can't get in, the rook can't get in, you should bring in reinforcements. What are the only two pieces not doing anything? It's the rook and the knight. So how can we do it? Well, I don't really want to allow my opponent to take my knight. I could bring this one in, but what am I threatening? I'm not actually threatening anything here. So a better move is just knight e2. Because this knight is going to actually slowly come towards our opponent's king and be the final killer, and black can't do anything. Now, to understand if such a move is going to be good, you have to, and this is the biggest thing to do if you want to get better at chess, work out if you have the time to do it. Now, first of all, if your opponent ever takes on f6, what can you always do? What can you play here to win? Because now we're going to checkmate. How can we checkmate here? This is something you'd have to calculate. Anyone? So how do we checkmate in this position? How do we checkmate? Checkmating in the nation. We just take here, and this move cannot be stopped. If a knight gets in the way, whoosh, we whip that knight off, and we come in with a queen. Boom! On h7. Lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So black can't do anything here. So actually, to be a better attacking player, what we're going to end this lesson with, it's lots of different things. First of all, you have to build up your position to attack. You can't attack from nowhere. You have to get your pieces in the right places. You have to take your time. You can't just attack from a position of weakness. You have to have a position of strength. You have to work out where your opponent's weak squares are, his focal points. Timing, very important. Do you have to rush your attack, or do you have time in this position to move more pieces into your opponent's position? In order to work out the timing, you have to think what your opponent is going to do next. In this position, black can't do anything. So you've got to jump into your opponent's mind as well as your own mind when you're playing chess. And I think numerous examples we've said there. Bring all the pieces to the party. That is, of course, if you can't win with just your little one piece. If you can win with one piece, just win with one piece. You don't need all your pieces. Get that one piece into the party. So I think I'm going to end the stream there, but I'm going to do a little cheeky raid over, and we will do that. So we better raid my good friend. So stay here, and I'll be back tomorrow at the same time, and we're going to do something else a little bit educational. So you should improve your chess if you come and watch me. If you're interested in knowing more about this course, have a look at Chessable, the thing above. There's some free videos there. Look at my YouTube channel, and thank you all for tuning in today. I hope you have a great day, or you've had a good day, or you've had an okay day, or you've just had a day. Sometimes we just have days, don't we? We don't always have good days. We just have days sometimes. But it's great to have so many of you here. I hope you learned something. I'll be back again another time. See you all later, and cheers.